Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today is November the 18th, 2020, and I decided I'm going to carry on a little further on the topic of my last video, child sex abuse and structures within government. And again, like the last one, this one might be sensitive to some people. If you feel it's too much, maybe mark it to watch later. Maybe you don't want to have your children around if you're watching this one. And if you feel you're triggering, just take a break. Just leave it and come back. I'm going to try to give solutions as I talk about some of the problems. I'm going to try to give solutions as well so people know what to do. So where I was talking the last video, I talked a lot about what goes on in the universities, pro-rape chanting minors, what's going on at Kinsey Institute where they're actually sexually abusing children and they're studying them to see the reaction. And what I want to talk about today is I'm going to talk about the universities. I'm also going to talk about the medical system. I'm of the belief that we live in a satanic system, but because we've been so programmed that this is normal, we don't ask any questions about what's going on. We take everything at face value that we're told, when maybe we should be questioning a few more things. And I want to talk about the universities and the statistics. So as I mentioned last time, whoever controls the information controls the mind, because we are trained that that's the only thing, the only possible explanation can be what they're telling us, either through media, through the education system, and it doesn't matter if media is newsprint, if it's magazines, television, even the internet now. I'm noticing when they're trying to put out disinformation, they're getting a little more clever. They'll put more truths in an article so that you start to think this is real, but then you realize no, then they put a deception in there. So you get a bit of the truth and a bit of the deception, but if you believe it as all of the deception, that just creates more chaos. So I want to talk about statistics, and I am in Ontario, Canada, and I think this is one of the most pedophilic countries in the world, and definitely Ontario, but there's a lot of money in Ontario too, so sometimes these things go hand in hand. But I want to talk about the statistics. So back in 2012, I started looking for information on statistics about child sex abuse, and I couldn't find it anywhere in Canada. And I thought, why would this be kept from the public? And I was very naive back then, well, for part of 2012, and then all of a sudden the lights went on and they haven't shut off since. But I couldn't figure out why they would keep this information secret, why they wouldn't let it be known to the public so the public would know what to do to protect their children from child sex abuse, what they would do to, if they suspected it was happening, how to trust their intuition, things along this line. So I started going on to online forums, and I would go to different conferences and I'd start listening to the experts, and they all talk shit. I'll just put that out right up front. So they talk about the statistics, and this is why they don't want you to know, because once you start putting this together, it is statistically impossible to be the way they say it is. So they say that there is a 40% recidivism rate, which is the rate that people who were hurt will repeat and continue to hurt other people. And I thought, okay, sure, on its own, that piece of information was all right. But when you started looking deeper, they say 1 in 3 girls or 1 in 4 girls experience child sex abuse up until age 8, like from birth to age 18. And they said 1 in 4 boys or 1 in 5 boys, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 boys, I think. And I think the answer, the real numbers are more like 1 in 3 for the females, if not higher, and I would say 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 for the males, even though that's just my opinion. Anyway, so, but what they're saying that, so it's hurt people is the biggest bullshit line that comes out of mental health. And what that does, it almost enables the abuse because, oh, that's just what they do. And it almost puts the therapist or the mental health practitioner in a position of narcissism because they're above it all. Oh, we don't do it, but we know other people are doing it. So if this is the case and 40% of victims who were hurt as children are reoffending, then they should be women, if women are more of the victims. So right off the bat, but Ontario has a few different organizations like the Ontario Women's Directorate that work very closely with the experts. We have 5 research centers in Canada that deal with child sex abuse. One is located at the University of Western Ontario in London. So they work very closely with the feminists at the Ontario Women's Directorate, and they come up with all these statistics, but the information is not available in the public eye, so you have to go looking for this. And so when I started researching this and started realizing nothing adds up, and then I think it was in 2015, Kathleen Wynne put out a report, It's Never Okay, and talks about the consequences of child sex abuse. And it's like mental health issues, what they call mental health, depression, anxiety, fight, flight, and freeze response. What else did she have in there? Eating disorders, addictions, all these things. So, and I'm sitting here thinking, those numbers, if it's one, like a quarter of the population was sexually abused as children, and a quarter of the population have mental illness. Why is nobody connecting those two statistics? So I was, curious about that. And so what I ended up doing was starting to dig more and more into this. And the more I looked for information, the more I realized there isn't any information. The more things started to smell. Something wasn't smelling right with that. And what I did was, there was a report from the University of Western Ontario it was from a think tank on November 10th, 2010. And they had all the big players in this think tank. And it was called Confronting the Many Faces of Child Sex Abuse, a comprehensive report. And when I started reading through it, they said nobody in the education system over 35 is a sex offender, which we know is not true. And I started reading through this and realized a lot of it didn't add up and didn't make sense. So then I started looking into who was in charge of the center down there. His name is Dr. Peter Jaffe. Peter Jaffe, you might remember him. He was also the expert who interviewed Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka is Ontario's most prolific female sex offender. If people didn't follow that story, it turned out she was the one guiding her husband to do the crimes. And she made a sweetheart deal, because the police aren't taught that it's the women who are the sex offenders. They are taught it's the males. And to be clear, for where I stand, doesn't matter who's doing it, it's wrong. But we can't discount the females anymore, because they're the ones creating a lot of the information and the statistics that are wrong. So anyways, this Peter Jaffe, he also runs an organization called the Fourth R. The Fourth R consists of 4 experts who go around to all the chief justices. So I think we have 11 chief justices in Canada, 1 for each province, who oversees all the justices, all the judges. So, so he would go and they would explain child sex abuse, how it works. And then I started looking into this guy a little more, and things were not adding up. And then what I found out was the center was created in 2008 by Stephen Harper, Prime Minister. And we're going to find out soon that there's a lot of prime ministers who are connected to child sex abuse, pedophilia, child torture. We're going to find out a few of these things. So whoever controls the information is who is going to be in charge of this. And so this Stephen Harper gave Peter Jaffe the resources to open up this clinic. But what the problem is, when they do the research and you have students who maybe want to do a good job, and so they submit their work for Mr. Jaffe to go through and say, yes, no, maybe, whatever. They get to steer the information. So if any students do get it right, they can squash that information or steer them down another path so that the truth never comes out. Why I'm going down this road. So the Fourth R is Peter Jaffe, David, what's his last name? David Wolf from University of Toronto. I mentioned University of Toronto last time. He's also in charge of CAMH. So these are the people that go to the chief justices to teach all of the judges about child sex abuse. And what the problem is I think they're intentionally giving the wrong information, because we hear things like judges say, why didn't you close your legs? Oh, what were you wearing? And they do a lot of victim blaming. So I'm going to come back to victim blaming and all this too. Sorry, I might be a little jumbled today. But why this matters is we need to understand who controls the information and why this is happening. So when I looked at the Fourth R and I started seeing that they were going in and explaining to the chief justices, they also work with the Ontario Women's Directorate. They also work with the Law Commission of Ontario. Did we even know we have one of those? And I believe the woman who was running that is the partner of one of these guys at the Fourth R. So they control all the information. And as we're seeing what's going on in the US, we're seeing all the nepotism, all the people who are connected to each other, all these people who get promoted. And you're like, why are they qualified for a certain job? And I'm under the impression they're qualified because they are going to do the wrong thing intentionally. So where I'm going with all this, I have in my head anyways that Peter Jaffe's not a good man. I think he created a poem, Peter, Peter, little kid eater, how do Canadian children grow? Some better than others when 1 in 4 is raped, don't you know? But that's here nor there. So I was at a house party. This was a couple years ago. So I want to talk about how this works. So we have 5 centers for research on violence and child sex abuse, but nobody gets it. Nobody understands it. They're still at the research stage. We have 14 police academies in Canada. You can be a convicted criminal in Canada and still apply to, get accepted, and graduate from the police academy if you are a convicted criminal. Now, this isn't going to be a surprise to a lot of people because we've also just heard that the RCMP is hiring convicted criminals. So we got to start wondering why. Why is the system set up this way? Where I'm going with the police academy, how I found this out, I was at a house party one night and I started talking to this gentleman, a very nice man, and he said he ran one of the police academies. So this is where I'm getting some of the information right from the horse's mouth. And he explained this, and I said, why do you think that is? And people want to brush us off as, oh, politicians are stupid. No, they're not. Nobody is stupid. Everything is intentionally designed to invert the system to keep making people trip up. And I told him I didn't believe that, right? And I started explaining what I thought. And then he told me that he had worked for a number of years in child sex abuse and looking for human trafficking and trying to protect the children. And what he told me was, hurt people hurt people. And I explained that I thought that was absolute garbage. And I thought it was just a mental health monkey loop just to keep people from looking at the powers that be. Everybody's always looking at each other, but they never look at the powers that be. And when I explained that, he told me of a story of a man who was at a playground and saw a little girl and lured her into the bushes and raped her. She was 4 years old. And when he asked him, when they caught him and when he was interrogating him, he asked him, why did you do that? And he goes, I was hurt as a boy. So this is what they all get told to say. They know on some level that's all you have to say. And then everybody goes, hurt people. And there's never any accountability when it comes to child sex abuse. He asked him why he chose that little girl. And he said, because she had the biggest smile. She was the brightest light. So I'm also convinced they're trying to steal energy from the children. And you're not going to hear this from any of the mental health monkeys. You're not going to hear this from any of the police services. You're not going to hear this from any of the statisticians in Canada. We also are hearing now, there's a lot of information coming out about the all the children that go missing that we've been told that they find and they bring them back home, that they find their way back home. 50,000 children go missing in Canada every year, as 800,000 in the United States. They figures 8 million children go missing, people go missing every year into human trafficking. Human trafficking now is right on par, if not surpassed, revenues on par with the illegal drug trade. So what does that tell you about how much money is in the human trafficking? This is why they don't want people finding it out, because the system is the only common denominator that is in every country, Western country. It doesn't matter if you've got your 3 levels of government. We talked about federal, provincial, or state, and the municipal or the counties. That is the only thing they have in common, and none of them answer to each other. How convenient. And the taxpayer funds all of these. So we're hearing a lot of information right now about the military going into the underground bases, the old abandoned military bases underground, and pulling a lot of survivors out. So even the statistics that they give us that are available maybe in the universities, the US keeps better statistics for the public to see than Canada. Even those statistics are wrong if they're not taking into account the people that they're impregnating, the women they're impregnating down there and producing these babies. If all these abortions are happening and they're late term abortions, there's no guarantee that child was killed. Where are these children going? So I really want to get us to start asking about everything that we are hearing in the system, because it stinks. It does not up. And until we start asking and even know what questions to ask ourselves, we're going to be stuck in this loop of giving all the powers that be chance just to scratch their head and say they don't understand. So I think at one point, Peter Jaffe had said he had looked at over 460,000 images of child sex abuse. If you've got an expert who's running a center and he's seen almost 500,000 pictures and still can't figure it out, at what point do you ask, is he getting off on this? And I will totally ask it. I sent him emails, I left him messages, and he won't return my calls, and I can just imagine why. Anyways, I want to talk about this. So we live in a Luciferian society. We have a blood culture. You look at what they don't tell you about in school. They don't tell you about your blood. They won't tell you in a hospital what blood type you are. They will not tell you what the attributes of different blood types are. My understanding is the Rh negative have a lot of high energy. They come out and they've got they go for a short burst, but they've got very high energy. And I heard it from one of the super soldiers say that, but the military knows this. And what they do is they bring those people out when they want to start a war, because they can really go in and make a big impact. And then they pull them back, and then they bring the B positives in, because the B positives have more stamina. So if we don't know this about ourselves, what else don't we know about ourselves? And I said last time, they talk about, oh, we're all genetic. No way. We're energy beings. We're electrical beings. We share, we have a spidey sense, almost, that we can sense different things about different people. We can pick up things in the energy field, but they don't want us focusing on this. They want us in the lowest common denominator. And they, in my opinion, they do not want men and women getting along. Wars make money for everybody, even domestic wars, where men and women are fighting. They can't make a relationship work. They're both working. They're both stressed out. Taxes keep getting rolled in, and that means they have less disposable income, and all these stresses come in, time constraints come in, men and women aren't making it work, and now we've got a broken home. And what happens with broken homes? That's where these predators go and look for children, because they don't have two parents to protect them. So poverty is a big part of this. And this is, all this comes full circle, because I look at what's happening with the COVID and how many people are going to lose their livelihood or lose their savings. And then all of a sudden they've got to go and maybe find another job. I don't know where they're going to find that right now, but they've got to find alternative ways to pay the bills, which means they're going to be gone. That means their children are going to be exposed. You think they don't know this? I have zero respect for people in the government who play stupid, or they're the corrupt ones. And when I talk about relationships, so they don't want people making love. We talked about this last time. You've got to use a glory hole or masturbate or wear a mask when you're kissing, according to Dr. Tam. You know, like these people are so offside. Nobody's given them the authority to be able to dictate what goes on in people's lives. These people are offside, and I'm hoping that they're going to face criminal charges. What I also want to talk about is the sexual misery, and this is where it's going to get maybe a little uncomfortable for some people. And I want to talk about the medical system. I talked a bit about that last video. So I talk about when a baby's born, that they, right off the bat, they cut off the placenta from the baby. Well, that placenta has blood in it. It has serum in it. It probably has cerebral spinal fluid. It has probably all kinds of things in, nutrients, to give that baby. They cut that lifeline off. Then they turn around and take a cloth and put drops in their eyes, or wipe their eyes, where they have a film on their eyes that might be there to protect them a little longer. And then what do we do 5 days later to the boys? In most cases, they get circumcised. And that's what I want to talk about today. And this is where it might be hard, because there's going to be a lot of people who react to this because maybe they've done it to their child and they got told that, oh, it keeps it clean. And they get told that that band of the foreskin itself, there's no purpose for it, but there's no purpose for your spleen either. And you don't need to know about your blood, and you don't need to know about your spirituality, and you don't need to know about your cellular knowing. You don't need to know about intuition. There's a lot of things they tell you you don't need to know. And what I'm going to share is that itself is human sacrifice. It is blood sacrifice. And I was watching a video this morning of a rabbi talking about what they do. And with the rabbi, so I don't know if this is the case in every situation, but they go in and they have to pin that little child down. They don't give that child any anesthetic. They pin that child down and they cut the foreskin off. And my understanding is some rabbis will come in and suck the blood to stop the blood, stop it from bleeding. And I can't imagine anybody in a hospital is actually falling for this. And some people might say, well, that's not true. But I have also heard Sandra Bullock on the Ellen DeGeneres show. These two are both creepy, explaining that her skincare program, which she uses, is the foreskin from babies that were circumcised. And this is what's going on their faces to make them look younger. And we honestly think that the medical community doesn't know this. So I pulled this off the internet. I'm going to talk about one person's perspective about circumcision. And this is something that we can stop as well. So we talk about, we have no problem pointing out that the female genital mutilation happens in Muslim countries, but we don't look at what we're doing. That's what happens to the girls, but we don't look at what happens to the boys. And if we're going to make some changes, we have to understand just how sick some of our own processes are. So this is a fellow off the internet. Why my circumcision posts get trolled more than any other topic. I have found no greater topic to bring out the sleepwalkers and repeaters than circumcision. First is the mother who thinks she did no harm to her little boy. Let me start by saying, it is not your fault, but it's time to know better, and that means doing better. And I've gone through this with clients of mine who, when they realize that exactly that circumcision was a blood sacrifice, and they feel absolutely awful about it. And we didn't know. And it's easy for me to say, I don't have children, so it's easy for me to say, I don't get to judge. I don't judge. I just want to heal, want to be able to show people how to heal themselves. And I've had some of them get very upset about it. And I suggested that they apologize to their sons. And I know one in particular did. And he said, it's okay, Mom. And it's not okay, but it doesn't have to, but it still shows an element of maturity and respect for the mother to admit something like that to her son. But we got to stop doing this going forward. We can't keep doing this to the little boys. So first is the mother who thinks she did no harm to her little boy. Let me start by saying it is not your fault, but it's time to know better. And that means doing better. No, they did not sleep through the procedure at all. They passed out from the pain and trauma that was occurring. Yes, they felt every bit of it. As research on the topic shows, they experience pain and their brain undergoes permanent changes from the trauma. You think they don't know this? Circumcision fractures the psyche of a child. You think they don't know that? Circumcision is a physical assault on the most sensitive part of a male child's body, which then makes it a violation of the psyche as well. And we are definitely in a spiritual war and a psychological war right now. If considered in combination with the existence of the chakras, this mutilation of an organ in the root chakra that affects on emotions involving security needs. Trauma at such a young age has an emotional impact on the psyche of a newborn baby that is supposed to be experiencing its first few hours bonding with its mother. And they do. Everything's the exact opposite for bonding from its mother. The hormone cortisol, which is isolated with stress and pain, spikes during circumcision. Although some believes the babies won't remember the pain, we now know that the body remembers, as evidenced by studies which demonstrate that circumcised infants are more sensitive to pain later in life. Distinct behavioral patterns characterized by increased anxiety, altered pain sensitivity, hyperactivity, and attention problems. Don't we call that mental illness, ADD, ADHD? Everybody's there, ready for a label. In another study, it was found that painful procedures in the neonatal period were associated with site-specific changes to the brain that have been found and associated with mood disorders, more mental illness. Trauma in infancy and early childhood has a tendency to soften up the mind and make people more easily controlled by the societal conditioning. It's time to accept that happened to him. The second person who denies the truth of circumcision is a deep slumbered male who claims that his circumcision was seemingly the greatest thing that ever happened to him, and he's glad he allowed his parents to dismember him. And I've heard people talk about this. I've heard people who were physically abused, beat up by their father in childhood, say it was the best thing that ever happened to him because it knocked some common sense in him. And that's just a survival mechanism because nobody wants to believe their parents would hurt them intentionally. So the child internalizes it, takes it, no, it's okay. It's not okay. And there's a lot of work to do to undo some of these programs that the children have been through. But most importantly is to understand it's not your fault. It's not okay that it happened. People didn't know, but we know now, and we're going to stop it going forward. This is exactly the type of herd thinking and slave talk those in power want circumcision to cause, where people are actually defending and excited about the trauma they went through. The ritual is an ancient form of social control. The slitting of a man's penis to cause bleeding and pain is to remind him of the power of the rulers. We have control over your distinction to be a man, your pleasure, and your right to reproduce. The ritual is a warning, and timing dictates who is warned. The newborn is informed, we mark your son, who belongs to us, not you, which we know with the birth certificates, when that is a certification that you are giving your child to the state. And those birth certificates are sold on the derivatives market, on the stock exchange, because they know when you come into the world, the chances are you're going to spend so much money in your lifetime that they understand that that's a commodity. You are the commodity. I'm going to go into that one another time. But you basically sold your child into the system. And that's another reason why Doug Ford doesn't want children being born at home. He wants them all in the hospital. They can record their date of birth. They know what time they were born. They know their blood type. They know absolutely everything that can be used for astrology with the natal chart. They know the consciousness of the child as based with the lineup of the planets at any given time. They know who's going to be the high priestesses. They know who's going to be the empress. They know who's going to be the magician. They know who's going to be the emperor energy and stand up for truth and goodness. They know all this. And this is many reasons why I call it the death care system. The ritual is a warning, and the timing dictates who is warned. The newborn is informed. We mark your son, who belongs to us, not you. Psychologists have extended this theory to incorporate notions of pain imprinting. By encoding violence on the brain, the child-maternal bonding is interrupted as an act of betrayal is instilled in the infants. The fact that we accept the brutality of our children under our watch gives such lame and weak excuses just shows how deeply we are under mass hypnosis. It's a setup because what is omitted is often more valuable than what is taught. Science is anti-nature. It's not nature versus nurture. Nature and nurture are on the same team. It's science. It's that left brain thinking without compassion, without heart on its own that is doing the dirty deeds, these evil deeds. Excuses just show how deeply we're under mass hypnosis. It's a setup because what is omitted is often more valuable than what is taught. Science is anti-nature, where science believes nature is faulty because they're anti-human. To believe circumcision is about sanitation is to believe vaccines are about immunity. Now, this I pulled off a couple of years ago. So that's kind of an interesting point. The lies get stacked as high and far as the eyes can see, all to get you to believe, to give away control and the power of your child so they can be traumatized and controlled the way those in control want it. And, you know, I'm going to go back to these children who are missing. I've heard some pretty horrific stories about what happens to these children and how they traumatize them, how they sodomize them, what this is all about, so they can fracture the psyche from the child and then they can program the way they want. I talked about you and Cameron last time. He's just one sick man. And I think I was watching something on BBC recently where his oldest son was upset because they were making his father look bad, that he was a monster. And there's a center in the United States, I'm not sure if it's the Hall of Psychology or what it's called, where they have all this information archived, and they allowed the son to come in and go through all of the information and pull out anything that made his dad look bad. Where's the truth when anybody can go in and just take out what doesn't suit them? Where's the truth in this system? So I talked a little last time about women who are having all these C-sections. So they're not, oxytocin's not bonding. They're not bonding with their children. Then you're circumcising half the population. You're traumatizing those people. When I say those people, I mean the males. What are we doing? Why are we worshiping this system? And now that the hospitals are all empty and we're treating our frontline medical staff like they're all demigods and they're applauding every Thursday for them, or they were, when the halls are empty and the hospitals are empty. We are actually empowering your own servitude. When I say we, I'm not in that per se because I don't buy into it, but that's what the majority of the people are doing, buying into the spell casting, all the black magic, the blood sacrifices. They're buying into all of this when we support that system. And yes, there's times when you need it. If you've had a traumatic accident or you need like the triage, the emergency unit, there's times you need it. I'm not saying there's not. But not everything that goes on in the hospitals is for people's best interest. So I was at a rally in Toronto, I don't know, maybe a month ago, I can't remember when it was. And a woman was talking to me. So my sign was that I was holding up was pretty punchy. But a woman came up and started talking to me. And she said, do you see that neon, there's a neon board flashing with advertisements? And she said, look at that. And she goes, watch the sick kids ad. And it showed a little boy who was half naked. He only had bottoms on. And he's flexing how strong he is. And this is an advertisement for pedophilia. She got it and I got it right off the bat. And I know a woman who told me that her son was in sick kids. He was vaccine injured as a boy and he would spend some time in sick kids. And he kept telling her they took him down to the basement in the middle of the night. And she didn't believe him because we wouldn't dare believe that somebody in a hospital would do that. Why wouldn't they? There's no parents around. There's nobody around but a certain number of staff. And if everybody's sleeping, then chances are the staff is reduced. And he said they would give electroshock treatments. They would do some pretty horrific things. And I don't know, I did not speak to this young man myself, so I don't know everything that happened. But she felt bad that she didn't believe him. And then as he started talking more and more about it, and she'd heard other people were starting to say these things, why do we give the people in charge the benefit of the doubt? We know that you and Cameron in McGill University and the Allen Memorial Hospital, they were doing horrific things. Why do we give the medical community, the mental health community, the law enforcement, all these people the benefit of the doubt when there's so much information that says they're the exact opposite of what they're saying? So we have a choice here. We can start seeing all the things we did wrong and recognize that, no, we were just encouraged to do that, whether it's on the TV that we're encouraged to do that, whether it's through the media that we're encouraged to do that, whether it's the radio stations that are all saying the same BS COVID stuff because they're all programmed to say the exact same thing. So you're getting the truth on every station because they're all reading the same script. When do we start questioning what is going on and why we're buying hook, line, and sinker into nonsense when there is no reason to believe anything that we see in our system right now, the Luciferian system, is actually real? So I just wanted to leave that with everybody today and just get you to start questioning why you believe everything that's going on. So there is a meme going around that says, oh, they can't cure cancer in the last 60 years, but they got a cure for a vaccine in 6 months. And I posted it and I wrote, why don't they have a cure for cancer? Why has it been the same chemotherapy and radiation for the last 60 years? And there was a nurse who said, yeah, I've been wondering that myself. And she has a personal relationship with cancer. Family member had it. And I'm like, they already have all these cures. Why are they keeping it from the people? How many naturopaths and holistic doctors have been killed because they've had the cure for cancer? Because it doesn't suit pharma. And this might sound like a bit of a conspiracy theory, but why haven't they improved cancer over 60 years if they can come up with 2 companies that have a vaccine within 6 months? Why can't they cure cancer? And these are the things we have to start asking. And I posted about medibeds, the medipods, where they're using light therapy, sound therapy, and color therapy. They say you can grow back limbs, you can grow back organs. And my understanding is this technology was available in the military, but which again, taxpayers paid for, but was hidden from all of us. And I posted that and she didn't comment. And I started thinking, she worried she's going to lose her job. Maybe there's something better for her to do. Maybe she can find a holistic way of helping people heal and not necessarily work directly in the medical establishment the way it's set up now. But we need some big changes, but to do that we have to recognize what's wrong in our society. So I'm going to jump back. I'm going to jump back to the story I was saying about this police. I don't know if he's a dean that ran the police academy. So he said that he could only work in that field of child sex abuse and child sex trafficking for about 5 or 6 years, and then he had to stop. That's usually the burnout rate, then they have to stop. And I could see he was getting not agitated, but he was getting stirred up. This is emotional stuff. This is the very life of children. You're destroying the souls of children. We are for letting this happen. And I could see he was getting a little uncomfortable with the conversation. And he goes, I have to go. And I said, that's okay. And then this person, another person bubbles over and she's, what are you guys talking about? And we started talking about it and he exited. And she worked with the victims. And she looked at me. And the first thing she said was, victims lie. And I looked at her and I said, in abuse, everybody lies. The abusers lie. The enablers who cover it up and say, oh, it's just your imagination. That didn't happen. They're lying. The people in the system lie. Why wouldn't the victims lie? And I said, besides, what makes you think you deserve the right to know everything about that person's life because they've had a traumatic experience at the hands of another? And she looked at me because nobody's ever challenged her that. Where do you think they learned to victim lie or victim blame and put it all on the victim? They learn this in the universities. And who's teaching it? We've got McGill University, you and Cameron. You think he didn't have classes where he's teaching the students this? Do you think Peter Jaffe at the University of Western Ontario isn't teaching his students victims lie? We have to start asking these questions. And why does everybody blame the victims? Because I'll tell you one thing, nobody's got the balls to ever say, the prime ministers, how many people have come out and said you sexually abused them? Oh, but we can't read the information and it can't become public in name of national security. There's Kathy O'Brien has come forward, Fiona Barnett, I think her name is, has come forward. There's enough people saying that this is happening. Oh, but we don't want to interrupt the money world. We don't want our world to shake up at all. We just want to pretend it's not happening. And it is happening. And if we're going to get ahead of this, we have to understand what it is. So I don't care if you're guilty of it. I don't care if you're complicit to it. I don't care if you're enabling it. I don't care if you're a bystander and pretending it's not happening. You are part of the problem. And I know it can be scary to know that this world's about to get shaken up, but there's so much information coming out now. It's getting shaken up whether you're ready for it or not, whether you can handle it or not. And what I try to suggest to people is start looking at some of this now and take it in increments, because the people who are going to get a truth bomb when all this comes out, they're going to be the ones who don't want to get out of bed in the morning. They're not going to believe their world is like this. And if anybody wants to sit here and tell me I'm full of it, that I'm wrong, or I haven't done my own research, or that who am I because I don't have a piece of paper that says I'm skilled in a cognitive science that is anti-soul. Don't tell me how to be human. You don't tell me what it means to be human. And I'm not imposing my views on anybody. I'm only sharing my views. But what is going to start happening is more people are going to start asking why you don't get it, why you pretend that this didn't happen, or why you're protecting certain, maybe it's a family member or a member in your community. Oh, you don't want to go against your minister or your priest, so you're just going to blame the child. I've been doing a lot of reading. There's a book out right now. What's it called? Pedosodomy in the State. CIA works with the Vatican. The Vatican is military. I found out that all the Freemasons, not all the Freemasons, certain ones at the top, the Freemasons, it doesn't matter the Order of Malta, it doesn't matter if they're the Templars, they've got all of these people who are willing to be corruptible. So it doesn't mean everybody in these organizations is corrupt. There's some Masons that are decent, but I'll tell you, they don't know what's going on. I know some Shriners who are decent, they don't know what's going on. They do not bring in the nice people and share the dark secrets with them. They just let them be the window dressing to make it look like it's all normal. And this goes for the Vatican. The Vatican is military. And anybody who has not figured out yet how all the child sex abuse has been covered up by them, that these priests are homosexual. And I might take a hit from the LGBT community. I don't care. I'm talking about child sex abuse. That's all I'm talking about. But it is the homosexuals, because they will go more offside sexually, especially the males. It is the lesbians who are placed in high positions. Most of them are lesbians that are placed in high positions that get to come up with the policies that the schools follow, the medical community follows, the governments follow. They're the ones who come up with that. But we're all taught from places like the Ontario Women's Directorate that women are the victims. Media tells you women are the victims. Universities tell you women are the victims. I had a situation, lots happened in the last little while, but it's also brought up some memories of things that have happened in the past. I published my first book back in 2016, and I quite like my editor. She was to the point. There was no fluff on it. There was just this. So I started writing another book, and I had her edit that book. And she came back and said, don't put me down as your editor. I don't agree with you. And she said, because she had been abused as a child, she went through social work and learned about all the child sex abuse. Well, they taught her all the stuff that happens within the family, that according to the ACEs study, 47% of the children that are abused at somebody, a caregiver or somebody in the family. But what that study doesn't show is 53% isn't, oh, we're just going to ignore the 53% because that's your coaches, that's your teachers, that's your politicians, that's the Boy Scouts, that's maybe the priests. So if you don't look at all of this, you're not looking at a full picture. But I kind of got taken aback because she had been a victim, so I couldn't say. Because you've been hurt by this crime doesn't mean you're an expert. It doesn't mean you have all the information. Because you're not hurt by this crime doesn't mean you're an expert, and it doesn't mean you have all the information. But we have to start looking at the whole picture and start seeing what's going on in the past to help the people heal in the past. See what's going on in the present, like I said, with this progressive sex ed, teaching 12-year-olds to let somebody fuck them up the ass in the name of sexual diversity. That's the females in the education system in Ontario teaching that. And then we have to look, what's the impact in the future? Just as this gentleman had come out and posted about circumcision, he can't change what's happened to him, but he can speak up and say, why don't we stop this practice? And I think we're there to that point, that if we're going to turn the page for humanity and start finding better ways to be, we have to understand how our sex energy works, how relationships work, why they don't want us connecting as men and women. And I think we have to maybe forgive ourselves if we've made choices, made mistakes that we didn't know. And when we forgive ourselves, sometimes it takes the heat off, because there's a shame around not knowing that basically you just cut your kid's dick off. Like, come on. And for the ones who let the rabbi suck on it, come on. Did that little boy have an orgasm on top of that? Come on. And if we don't understand the significance of our sex energy, we're gonna just keep making amoral and amoral and amoral choices. So I think that's probably enough for one day. I've got a few other things that just popped into my mind, but I think that's enough for one day to stop. So think about the things you've done that maybe you regret. Did you hit your child? Did you yell at your child? Did you shame your child? I can't believe you just did that. That's a shaming move. And I'm not judging anybody. I don't care. I shouldn't care more about your children than you do. I care about the collective humanity. But we can all make good choices. Is it because you're stressed out at work? You're stressed out at home? You don't get enough time to yourself? So you're a little short fused? What's going on? But we have to change how we view families, how we change how we view children. We have to change how we view our sexuality. And if we're going to raise a society of children, I'd like to see us raise a society of children that don't have to get over their childhoods. That would be ideal. And I'm not blaming future generations. Some of them had some horrific things happen, and it's not hurt people. It's the parents didn't know. You need a license for absolutely everything. To even go fishing, you need a license, but not to be a parent. And I'm not suggesting we license it, but I don't know too many places who teach strong parenting skills or strong relational skills. And I don't see, I'm going to talk about one other thing. I'm going to talk about Gloria Steinem. So Gloria Steinem, so this has been going on in the universities for quite some time. Gloria Steinem was a feminist in the 60s, and that's who else I was listening to this morning talk, that the rabbis say that they were the one who created the feminist movement to get the women to feel that they've all been done by on earth by the males, to cause that divide, right? Because sometimes being a victim you can be empowered by being a victim. And I'm not saying that happens to all of them, but I've seen it happen. But they convinced a whole generation that they needed equal rights. They needed equal pay. The money system it's a fiat money system. It's not real. I'll go into that one another time. So, but they wanted you to fight for every right because the men were your enemies. Instead of saying, how do we work together? How do we say, hey, the Income Tax Act is illegal. We don't want to pay income tax anymore. Or if people are really hell-bent on it, you do it on a voluntary basis. Or when you're raising children, that you don't pay tax on the incomes, or one income, or so. You got to change it somehow to give them some leeway, because there is more expenses there. But we don't do anything that helps the average person get ahead. We don't do anything to support the family. We don't do financially in our governments. And sure, they give you tax credits. That's all they give, but that gives daddy governments giving you the tax credits instead of us saying, no, we're not paying that. And we take our power back. I believe income tax should fall for everybody, but that's another story, like I said. But Gloria Steinem had women convincing that you get to fuck like the men. You get to go out and be a man. She was a CIA operative. CIA, turns out, is within all the election corruption that's coming out. I understand they found some servers in Germany. You know why they didn't invite the CIA in on that raid? That they asked the German government to help them? Because it was the CIA who had the servers. You can't make this stuff up. This is how corrupt our system is. The whole thing has to fall. And when it falls, but we also can create a better system. So we can still be working towards the light while we're watching the dark fall away, but we have to call the dark out. So Gloria Steinem, would you call her a bitch? Would you call her conniving? Would you call her sneaky? Would you call her manipulative? Her role was to turn women against themselves and the men. I'm going to talk about the transgender policy in Ontario. There's 3 women who were on the select committee of mental health. Christine Elliott, who is now your health minister, I think, in Ontario. Is she, or she's connected to that? Liz Sandoz. Liz Sandoz is from Homewood, Guelph, Ontario. She was the education minister who brought in the sex ed. And Deb Matthews. is the finance minister, I think, in the Liberal Party. So you have a conservative and 2 liberals, so it's not a party thing. They brought in the transgender bathroom policy that men can go into girls' bathrooms. These are the females. So if anybody thinks that women are this divinely guided, I'm going to say sex, not gender, you're mistaken, because that only comes from within. But we're starting to see who will go to what lengths of committing evil to get ahead for money. That isn't real. Anyways, that's, like I said, another story. And we have to start calling them out for what they are. I don't care if you're working the media and you're a journalist. I saw Christy Blatchford just blast a girl who had been, she had too much to drink and she was at the party and was sexually, I don't know how it all went. Anyways, I watched these women just tear this girl apart. These are the women at the National Post. Barbara Kay did it, Christy Blatchford, I think that old hag's dead now. They did it. And these women on some level have to know that you have to be absolutely heartless to get ahead in a man's world. And they're willing to do it. And like I said, so these university educated women are behind a lot of this. University of Toronto has a sex center. I'm going to tell you how stupid some of these highly educated women are. University of Toronto has a sex center. And when you get on the site, or at least I was on it a while ago, I looked and it said, well, they're trying to find out if women enjoy more of a clitoral or vaginal orgasm. That's what they're studying at the sex center. So because everything's debatable, you know. And what I think they haven't figured out yet is, you don't think they're filming you, do you? You don't think they're going to find blackmail material on you, do you? You don't think if one girl can't get off that they're going to say, oh, her wrist is sore, why don't you go help her, do you? We have a responsibility to stop being so fucking stupid. And the left brain thinker who cannot bring in their heart, the right brain function, cannot bring in their compassion, their understanding of what it means to be beautiful and be female, they're the ones you're the ones they want, because you can be programmed, because you'll do anything, you don't care. And this is where we need to start coming back to the heart of humanity. What is in our heart? Would you hurt somebody else for money? Would you do it knowingly? If you wouldn't do it knowingly, then that probably means you have some conscience, but we still have to understand all the programming. Anyways, that was a bit of a rant today, but I just wanted to share that and get it out, because we're starting to watch. I don't care who sits here and tells me that they're these wonderful women. No, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But we have to look at the attributes of what makes women wonderful. Do you know how many heterosexual older women said, oh, I'm heterosexual, but I support the LBGT. You support a 12-year-old taking a cock up the ass? Some of these people are just rote answers. That's all they're capable of. They just go along to get along. But we have to stop that if we're going to get ahead of this. And I think you probably realize by now, I'm not stopping. I don't care. I'm tired of hearing we're all too fucking stupid to figure it out. And I think I'm going to leave it there. So if you find this helpful, if you have any questions, I'm not sure if I'm going to post. I have to see if I can find this guy who gave the information about the circumcision, but maybe I'll post that, because people could benefit from knowing that. And when somebody tries to shame you and says, it's for sanitation reasons. No, you need that band of muscles, because later in life, what happens when you're making love, there's nerve endings in that band of muscles, or the foreskin. And that's what you connect lovingly with your partner with as you're thrusting. That's what that band is for. And to have a medical doctor tell you it's not necessary is, I don't know, pretty dark spirited, I think, anyways, or stupid, I don't know. So I'm going to leave it there. If you find these videos helpful, by all means, hit the subscribe button, the notification button. You can email me at sandy@endinggloballoneliness.com. If you have any questions or you want to keep it private, I'll do my best to answer, or show you maybe a different, if you're having a problem with something, I can maybe show you a different source of information. A lot of the books I read were in the 40s, 50s, and not so much the 60s. This is before the feminist movement and the feminazi movement and the really destroying human sexuality came into play. A lot of people had this figured out. People worked with Freud and knew he was a fraud. They never made it big, but Freud did. Freud believed every boy wanted to have sex with his mother and every girl wanted to have sex with his father. Do you ever wonder why these sexual fucking retards are the ones that make it in high places, in government structures, in universities, in psych departments? Maybe they're the psychopaths. Maybe they're the ones who have the hang up. Who knows? but something to consider. But if you want to ask me any questions, by all means, you can subscribe, send me an email, and let's do love right. Let's bring love back to the universe, but figure out how our sex energy is manipulated so we can get that taken care of and move forward with a little more ease. At least that's the plan. Anyways, thank you for taking the time, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.